I would like to welcome you back to class. In this lesson, we shall be looking at the origin of Scrum. Still under the first module, Scrum the framework. In the last lesson, we looked at what Scrum is. So in this lesson, lesson 2, we would go way back to see the origin of Scrum. And I'll be laying the foundation for this class with a session of the book Scrum, the Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time. Scrum, the Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time is a book written by Jeff Sutherland, co-creator of Scrum. That is Dr. Jeff Sutherland. Some agilists had referred to the book as the Scrum Dictionary. I would recommend you to get a copy of that book for yourself. It's a great book. Scrum, the Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time by Jeff Sutherland, co-creator of Scrum. And I'll be reading from the second chapter, The Origin of Scrum. So, here we go. My team and I spent a few weeks reading hundreds of papers and books and articles on the organization of teams and product development. Then one day, one of the developers came in with a Harvard Business Review paper from 1986, written by two Japanese business professors, Hirotaka Takuchi and Ikujiro Nonaka. It was titled The New Product Development Game. Takuchi and Nonaka had looked at teams from some of the world's most productive and innovative companies: Honda, Fuji Xerox, 3M, Hewlett Packard, and others. They argued that the old way of doing product development, typified by NASA's phased program planning system, a waterfall system, was fundamentally flawed. Instead, the best companies used an overlapping development process that was faster and more flexible. The teams were cross-functional. The teams had autonomy. They were empowered to make their own decisions, and they had a transcendent purpose. They were reaching for something bigger than themselves. Management didn't dictate. Instead, executives were servant leaders and facilitators focused on getting obstacles out of their team's way rather than telling them what and how to do product development. The Japanese professors compared the team's work to that of a rugby team and said the best teams acted as though they were in a scrum. The ball gets passed within the team as it moves as a unit up the field. Takuchi and Nonaka's paper made a splash when it was first published, but that was 7 years before we were reading the paper at Yale. Everyone had admired it, but no one had done anything with it. The average American manager was unable to make sense of it, even though Toyota was rapidly increasing market shares using this approach. At Yale, we had nothing to lose. We decided to try it, even though the paper focused on manufacturing, not software development. I thought their ideas tapped into something fundamental, a descriptive process of how humans work together best in any endeavor. It flowed into all the other experiments I'd conducted going back to my first job in a private sector at Mid-Continent. This was the formal birth of Scrum. We delivered the product at Hazel on schedule within 6 months, under budget, and with fewer bugs than any previous delivery. I got so excited about the possibilities of this new form of project management that all my future work focused on refining Scrum for companies. In 1995, I presented a paper with Ken Schwaber called Scrum Development Process, which codified those practices at an Association of Computing Machinery Research conference. End of read. So that was the narration by Dr. Jeff Sutherland on how Scrum started. And this is putting faces to it. These are the two professors from Harvard that made the presentation back in 1986. The two Japanese professors, Hirotaka Takuchi and Ikujiro Nonaka. And from that moment on, Scrum had some splash. Around 1993, when Dr. Jeff Sutherland came across it, he worked together with Ken Schwaber, and Scrum later translated into a formal documentation. They continued to develop the work from the mid-90s up until when Scrum became a documented process in 2010. That was when we had the Scrum Guide, developed by both Jeff Sutherland and Ken Schwaber. So, what brought about Scrum? Scrum came to be as a result of frustration and bottlenecks that precisely development teams faced. Before then, we had the conventional ways of delivering products. Paramount was the waterfall, and in the waterfall process, you needed to be told what to do, and there wasn't much transparency. You just go get the job done, and there were lots of bottlenecks. There were a lot of hierarchies. There were a lot of blockers that team members tend to face that would not get resolved on time. So when Scrum came up and was experimented by Jeff Sutherland with Ken Schwaber, they realized that teams could work together. In the previous narration, in a part of the book that I read, we could see the key words, cross-functional teams. In the previous lesson, I made emphasis on cross-functional team, when you have all the skill sets to deliver in that particular team. So you do not have somebody holding you up against delivery. And we could also see from the paper developed by the two professors, or delivered by the two professors, Hirotaka Takuchi and Ikujiro Nonaka, the teams were also autonomous. They could make their own decisions. They could focus on what they need to do part time. And that was one of the key things. On the other hand, the management team, rather than dictating for the development team, they became servant leaders, removing obstacles. So, how Scrum came to evolve was to change the structure in such a way that the leaders became the force moving ahead, clearing the road, and ensuring that the development teams could work effectively and efficiently. So by the time any task gets cascaded to the development teams, there is no other thing stopping them from delivering. For instance, you are to develop a particular model, and every time you got to the site, you realized that one of the key artisans that you are to work with is not available. And when you raise it, you are always told that you should send your request to the management team, and the CEO will need to approve the request, and finance would make funds available, and program management will now seek to get that person. All this would then become bottlenecks for you in delivering that particular product. On the other hand, in Scrum, while you are moving to site, all the components, all the skill sets, all the capacity and availability you need to deliver that task is given to you. And that is how Scrum works. So we could see from here how Scrum came to be from way back in the 80s, started in an unpopular way by two Japanese professors who came up with research work on that model, but it became amplified and structured by the pair Jeff Sutherland and Ken Schwaber. So this is where we'll end the lesson for this class on the origin of Scrum. If you have any question, or if you have some other areas you would want me to expand on, please put your questions together and ship them across to me. Thank you very much. We'll see you again in the next lesson.